과거 트럼프 전 대통령의 홍보 책임자였던 미국 헤지펀드 스카이브리지의 앤서니 스카라무치 최고 경영자가 트럼프 대선 후보가 당선되면 시장 경제에 악영향을 끼칠 수 있다는 안 좋은 발언을 했습니다. 그는 도널드 트럼프 행정부 초기인 2017년 7월에 백악관 공보국장에 임명됐으나 곧바로 불거진 권력 암투 과정에서 11일 만에 경질된 바 있습니다. 그는 이후 트럼프와 완전히 등을 돌린 상태로 트럼프가 공화당 대선 후보로 결정되면 조 바이든 대통령을 위해 캠페인을 벌일 계획이라고 밝히기도 했습니다. 과연 악감정만으로 이런 발언을 했는지 인터뷰를 통해 진실을 알아보겠습니다.
Let's take the political side first, and then we'll move to the crypto side. Since we are right near the elections, we've been hearing from people that there's a lot of concern here about a potential Trump presidency, and people are sort of trying to prepare for it. What have you been hearing here on the ground?
Well, you and I have talked about this before, and you were lovely to interview me in 2020. I think we sat in this tent. I said Trump will not win re-election. Generally, the view here in 2020 is that he was overwhelmingly going to win re-election. And I think if you survey people here over the last several days, they believe that he's going to win again. They believe that we're setting up for another Trump presidency, and I think that there's an age issue with President Biden. I mean, one's 81, but looks a little bit more frail than the 78-year-old, but we have a combined 158 or 59 years of people running for president. So I think Joe Biden will beat Donald Trump, and it's not just because of I'm being contrary to the consensus here. I think once we start peeling back the onion again, people are going to realize how destructive he was and how damaging he actually was to the country. And remember, we lost 21 million jobs on his watch. The entire economy imploded during COVID. A lot of people feel he didn't handle that right. He fomented an insurrection, which he's about to face the music for at a trial. He's got 91 indictments, 4 big federal cases, 2 federal cases, 2 state cases. And the most important one, though, I think to our intelligence community are the documents. So despite his early successes in these primaries.
Would a second Trump presidency be good for markets?
So I think that the consensus is that it would be, but I don't think it would be. And I want to explain why, because it's very important. We have the best legal system in the world, maybe us in the UK. It's very, very predictable, and it's grounded in 900 years of common law. Mr. Trump has told us that he wants to be a dictator for a day. Mr. Trump has told us that he's going to use the Department of Justice to persecute his adversaries. Mr. Trump has told us that his goal will be to expand the executive power of the United States. And so anybody that's really studied our system knows that the flat, decentralized nature of our system has enabled each of our families to grow in America. And so when you have people that think like that, and they think in a more authoritative way, it could be very, very dangerous. So yes, it could work in the beginning. People were very happy in Germany in the 1930s. They were very happy in Italy. They ended up a lot less happy. And anytime you get people that think like Mr. Trump, you get a lot of cronyism at the top. And I think it's very, very dangerous. So yes, short term, that's the perception. It would help business. But long term, if he destabilizes the predictability of our legal system, the cost of capital in the United States and globally is going to go up a lot. And people have to look at it long term. They have to think about what made the country great was a flat, decentralized structure where each of us could grow our own families and seek our own aspirations.
Right. And apologies, by the way, for I don't even know what that sound is in the background.
Something doing snow. Something
right?
with snow.
Yeah.
Talking
Something. Yes. Don't worry. Well, we'll be able to hear you loud and clear. Just wanted to acknowledge the environment that we are in here in Davos, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Speaking of decentralization, that's a good segue to talk about crypto here. I was talking a lot about the spot Bitcoin ETF last week, which is seen as a real milestone. Do you see it that way? Do you think it's going to be the huge money bringer to Bitcoin that a lot of people are seeing?
Over time it will be, and I think you guys addressed this last week, but it's worth noting. You have lots of investors that went into the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust at 2%. They bought it at the Bitcoin at 50,000, 60,000, 69,000. And so when the ETF became available and they were able to sell the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust and take a loss for tax purposes, and you guys know this, they have to wait 30 days before they can reload. But it's a great arbitrage for these people. They can go from a 2% trust into a 21 basis point ETF, and they have to wait, and there's a lot of churn and a lot of volume churn as a result of that. But I think generally the notion that this is an asset class that's here to stay, people like Abigail Johnson at Fidelity and Larry Fink are working on it at BlackRock, I think is great for the industry. Now, what I will say is that we've overly politicized regulation in the country, and I would love to see the SEC move to a more nonpartisan, non-political standard the way the Fed is. And I'm wondering if that could ever happen, because every time we get a new president and we get a right-leaning president or a left-leaning president, we bring somebody in that politicizes the regulation. That's very bad for the industry.
So you think that the SEC's reluctance to really put a stamp of approval on crypto products has been a political stance?
No question. Yeah, this is all born from Elizabeth Warren. She cut a deal with Joe Biden in 2020. She dropped out of the race in exchange for having a lot of say over what happens in the banking industry and the world of financial services. And so she was part of selecting Janet Yellen, and obviously her sidekick in Washington is Gary Gensler. And I call them the regulatory axis of evil, because they're not studying the protocols, they're not studying the technology, they're making these symbolic statements. They're like, oh, this is about fraud, this is about money laundering, where it's not saying that there isn't some money laundering and fraud, but there certainly is. There's more of it with the US dollar, by the way. And I just think the point is, if they calm down and really studied the technology, they'd be running towards the technology, not away from it. And frankly, Mr. Gensler knows better. Well, listen to his 24 lectures at MIT. He's actually at heart a blockchain enthusiast.
미국 대선에 따라 코인의 시장에 악 영향이 올 수 있고 좋은 영향이 올 수 있지만 분명한 거는 지금 코인 시장 분위기는 ETF 이슈 등 많은 호재거리로 상승할 것이라고 예측합니다. 최근 코인 투자를 하시는 많은 분이 큰 돈을 쓸어 담고 있습니다. 실제로 우리 주변에서 100억대 코인 부자들도 상당히 늘어나고 있는 추세인데요. 정말 부럽기도 하지만 한편으로는 정말 화가 나는 것이 사실입니다. 코인에 투자하는 것도 똑같고 사용하는 어플도 똑같은데 왜 이렇게 차이가 나는 걸까요? 핵심은 차트에 있습니다. 실제로 100억대 코인 부자들은 항상 차트의 중요성을 강조했는데요. 하지만 막상 차트를 공부하려고 인터넷을 찾아봐도 핵심은 없고 다들 추상적인 이야기나 누구나 아는 내용들을 자기들만 아는 것처럼 떠들고 있는데요. 비싼 유료 강의 역시 마찬가지입니다. 월급에 맞먹는 몇십 몇백만 원에 이르는 금액을 쓰면서 들어도 무료 강의와 큰 차이가 없는 것이 현실입니다. 그래서 제가 구독자님들의 이러한 사정을 다 이해하는 만큼 큰 선물을 준비했습니다. 바로 차트의 이론부터 실전까지 한 권으로 끝낼 수 있는 강의 자료입니다. 실제로 제 지인분들도 이 자료를 받고 수익률이 급격하게 증가하는 드라마틱한 경험을 느끼셨는데요. 하지만 제가 이걸 유튜브에서 직접적으로 공개하게 되면 다른 코인 유튜버들과 코인 강사들의 질타와 공격 때문에 힘들게 키운 저의 유튜브 채널이 위험해집니다. 그래서 큰 고민 끝에 문자를 주시는 구독자들에 한해서 이 강의 자료를 무료로 제공하기로 마음먹었습니다. 010-5886-4840으로 공부라고 문자를 보내주시면 한 분 한 분 빠짐없이 챙겨드리도록 하겠습니다. 이 강의 자료를 받아보시면 아시겠지만 다들 코인 움직임이 다 보이실 정도로 눈이 확 트였다고 고맙다고 말씀해 주십니다. 010-5886-4840으로 공부라고 문자를 보내주시고 비싼 유료 강의나 엉터리 무료 강의 듣지 마시고 저희 구독자분들 모두 이 강의 자료를 받으셨으면 좋겠습니다.